Hello, welcome to the UX Playbook. Today I'm joined by Koji Pereira. Welcome to the show. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you, Ryan. Very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Perfect. So firstly, I just want to say congratulations on your recent career move. How are you settling in?
Oh, it's been amazing. Honestly, it's been probably one of the most exciting time in my personal career. It's been just a month and a half so far, and it's been great. I think the biggest highlight to me is that I'm actually working again with Brazilians, which I am
Yes.
Brazilian myself. So to me, it's kind of coming back to my culture and kind of reconnecting to my mother country. It's been amazing, and I'm doing this remotely, which is very specific. So I don't have to actually leave the city that I love, which is San Francisco.
And I think 2 years ago, maybe you wouldn't have even thought that possible. Whereas now, post-COVID, everything seems possible, which is fantastic.
Totally, totally. It's amazing. And we actually, well, just to clarify, this is Neon, and they're a fintech company. They're in the banking, new bank space, and they are building banking for the lower classes in Brazil, working classes. And I think the interesting thing is that we're actually building banking for the in-banks population in Brazil. So there's a lot that connects to my story, that connects to the things that I care about. I was the first in my family to go to college, so to me, it's a way to also give back while I work. So it's great because it kind of like connected the two things.
The other thing I really like as well is the Chief Design Officer title, which we're seeing more and more of. I think there's still a bit of work there to be done to become more of a mainstream title and seniority for design, but it's just great to see companies taking the steps forward to get design recognized where it needs to be, I think, to make those kind of high level decisions and impacts within a business.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think that's another reason why I was so excited about the role is because I actually respond directly to the CEO. I'm on the C-suite, so we have all those executive meetings. But I'll be honest with you, I'm learning a lot. Like there's a lot of finance to it. There's a lot of like how do you, raise funds? How do you actually manage P&L? How do you think about, the basically the health of your institution, your organization. So, and I'm learning about a lot about other areas too, because now I'm actually having these conversations with the other leaders, and all of them represent different areas of the company. And we have this forum where we basically every week we talk about specific topics that are important for each of us. And I'm able to learn a lot about like, legal and finance, as I said, operations, and it's been amazing, honestly. Again, like very um elevating experience to me because I'm learning a lot.
Amazing. Well, in one of my earlier shows with Steven Steiner, he said, you're either earning or learning, and if you're doing both, then you're doing well. So,
Exactly. I feel like that. I always optimize for learning because I feel like I need to not only use all the potential that I have, but I actually need to find more that maybe I haven't, even thought about. So that's how I feel now. I feel like, okay, this is something that I didn't know I could learn, basically.
that's brilliant. So, look, we're going to be discussing UX strategy and embedding UX strategy within the team and within the business. So, I guess a very brief understanding of why you've chosen the topic would be fantastic to set us up.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Well, I think what I would say about strategy is when I look at design, right? Like design as a discipline over the years. Design really started with static things, right? Like internet was not a thing, and we had graphic design, we had the physical product design, and most of this industry, we didn't have the idea of iteration, right? Like you basically worked in something that you deliver to the world. Then you get feedback. Let's say people love it or people hate it, and then you had a chance to, again, maybe work in a new version. But the idea of fast iteration like we have today was not really a thing. You couldn't really like test a prototype and iterate fast and then come up with another one, and all this magic that happens with digital. And what I would say is that at least the most of the graphic designers that I knew in my beginning in 1997, they had this idea that, okay, I'll get the briefing, I'll get whatever the client wants. I'll try to translate that to my knowledge, to my, let's say, to my design lingo. And I'll try to grab what they said and transform into something that makes sense and show them a proposal, right? That was pretty much the design process at that time. And sometimes you do that more, sometimes you do like 3 or 4 proposals. But the idea of like you go into an office, you work in a solution, then you come back and show to the client was pretty much the rule. Now we're embedding to organizations and we're working with engineers, we're working with data scientists, we're working with marketing people, we're working with product managers. And all of these people, they have very different ways of thinking. So first, we need to really like flex our muscles and try to understand how other things and create this bridge between us and others and really like translate how we think about design to a language that makes sense for them, because it wouldn't make any sense to talk about just affordances or I don't know, just like pregnancy to people who don't know at all about laws of UX or whatever book that you read about design. So I think that's number one, just translating your language to others. Then the second thing is like, okay, now your design is valuable not only because it's nice or beautiful or aesthetically pleasing or even useful. You actually need to understand the whole play that your design has in a strategy of the company. For instance, when you launch something, will that feature be moving the needle for the company in the right direction? Will bring more engagement or more revenue? Will that actually maybe bring a little bit less revenue in the next 3 months, but in the next year will be a bigger thing? Or will that be a novel thing that will bring attention to your product and then you gain momentum to launch more features and get people excited about your product? Or will that thing position you in the market in a way that people will feel like you have a unique value proposition? So strategy is something that will actually make your designs valuable at the end of the day. Will make your designs be actually part of people's life. Because one is to create like amazing motion design that people will look at Dribble and be super excited about. Wow, that's cool. That's really nice. But you basically showing design to designers, right? And you're basically probably working by yourself most of the time when you're doing design at Dribble. When you are in a company, you need to pull all these levers to understand, okay, now to get to my goal, which is capture the user attention on this specific job to be done or this specific feature, I need to make sure that an engineering team does something that they don't know how to do yet, or maybe something that requires a different type of technology. I'll have to make sure that marketing team is having a good go to market plan that will really like translate what my feature or my proposal is, so users understand and users capture exactly what the job to be done that I'm trying to replicate in that feature. And then on the other side, externally, you want to make sure that users will use that feature and understand, okay, this is different. I love this, and not just like, okay, this is another X, or this is another, I don't know, let's say banking feature. So that's when I think it's very important to not only think about the surface level of design, but really understand, uh, longer term strategy, why this is important, why this will move the needle, how this is taking you to your North Star or to your value proposition, how it will differentiate you in the market so you're not just looking like another app or another product in a sea of different products. So to me, that's a very interesting topic where I believe most of the designers that I been interviewing the last years, and I've been in this industry for 20 years now. They're pretty good, honestly. Most of the designers are pretty good. They can do amazing solutions in terms of design. But I think where most fail is to translate these skills in the reality of strategy, in the reality of teamwork, right? Like teamwork being the one first that I talked about, translating our language, and strategy being how do you position your product, how you differentiate yourself, how you make sure you're moving the needle and the right metrics over time. So, again, what I would say to especially younger designers is don't worry too much about, the hard skills of design if you feel like, that will take your time and you're gonna get there. Honestly, it's just a matter of practice. It's almost like you need to be looking at design patterns. You need to make sure that you're using products that in the space that you like. You want to make sure that you learn Figma. Yeah, that's all important. But most important than that, and where most fail, is to translate those skills to something practical and as important as strategy and teamwork.
Why do you think they do fail? Because it was sounds like quite a big problem if a lot of the designers you're speaking to are kind of falling down at this point. So is it, do you think, because maybe they are being sheltered too much from seniors, or maybe they're not given the opportunity to learn these valuable skills?
I think it's a mix of both, right? Like, there's this saying, it's like a snowball. If you don't know how to talk about strategy, or you don't know about how to talk about business with your business partner or your product manager, then naturally they will give you less space and they will include you less in meetings, right? And then it becomes a snowball. Am I not participating because I'm not being invited, or I'm not participating because I don't know how to participate? And it becomes hard to understand, like, over time, where's the root of the problem is, because you've been in this mode for so long. And yeah, the product manager tried to include me before, but I was so quiet in the meeting. And then I was like, okay, I quit. So how to break this to me is, you need to first you need to educate yourself, right? Like, I would say, read strategy books, read product management books, read even, like, if you have time, do an MBA, which I would love to have the time to do it. But I mean, there's a bunch of books that you can read, even like the most classical ones from, like, um, high output product management, or high output management, or the most recent ones like Hook, or Lean Startup, or Inspired. Those are all classic books that I guess most of people read over time. But if you're beginning right now and if you think about design, do not read just design books. Do not stay only in the design field. And maybe you're going to learn this too late. So as early as you can start to think about those things, the better it is. And what I would say too is, do not feel like you need to just like keep polishing your design skills forever, and that will be fine, right? Like, you need to also, think more about the T shape. Yes, you're actually a very good, let's say, visual designer, and that's what I think it's the most common thing to see people who are very good at visual design, but they don't expand the horizon, trying to understand other things. At the very least, you have to understand some concepts of the other areas if you're working in a product team.
So my understanding, I guess from your definition, is that the UX strategy should fall in line with the overarching business strategy, product strategy. They should be all pulling in the same direction to get the best results. And therefore, I guess you need to be educating those around you, whether they be engineers or founders, product managers, about what that overarching user experience strategy is and why it's going to help achieve those business goals from a design perspective.
Yeah. So I don't know if I can separate the strategies. To me, it's like all product strategy or strategy. Um, I think in the past, I used to work in teams where we had like all these design visions, right? Like the stacks with the idea of what the product will be in 3 years. But what I learned over time, and of course, this is part of strategy. What I learned over time is that it's actually better if you can just translate that into a product strategy or a strategy. What that means to me is just that, yes, you work in a 3 year vision and you create this like awesome designs and very inspiring solutions, but you don't do it by yourself or only on the design team. You actually work with engineers, you work with PMs, and you try to define even like what's the roadmap to get to that, right? Like what are the things that you can launch, and you work with engineers to build that roadmap, and you put in your strategy. That way, your strategy is actually way, way stronger. And you still have your space, you still have designs there. But the idea that you're building a design strategy separated from the rest could be something risky, in my opinion. And I think we tend to be in organizations a little bit more separated than the rest, right? Like it's very common to hear like, oh, the design team this, the design team that. But at the end of the day, we're part of the same team and we're building the same things together. So what I would encourage people to think is to um, think about like, okay, what we are building here in the design team is actually not a design output, but it's actually a company output, and we should work together to bring that as a strategy or like a vision for the future.
So that's really, really interesting, because I think a lot of people will resonate with what you're saying. I think there will be a lot of people who will be wanting to work like that, but they might be struggling. So there'll be pushback, or there will be those challenges from various stakeholders within a business. So what are some practical steps that someone could, let's say, design leader, design manager, whatever they might be, even like principal designer, to try and engage those people within the business into that way of thinking, to bring design into just the overarching strategy if they're struggling?
hmm Okay. Well, I totally understand when you say people might be struggling, and I want to empathize here for a second. Um, So to get to the place that I am now, I've been through a lots of ups and downs, and I've been to places where I didn't feel like I could really, work in the way that I am able to work right now. What I would say is really pick your employers as they pick you, right? Like employers will do a long interview process. They will interview at least more than one candidate until they get someone for that job. So do the same, like do not interview for one company. Do not like even look for one industry only. Like maybe look at different industries and sectors of tech if you're working in tech, and do your homework, like do multiple interviews and try to gauge how they'd like to work with design. Especially if you're, again, like, of course, I am in a place of privilege right now, right? Like I'm CDO. So if you, maybe not probably not in a place of privilege like that, then I would say try to gauge things before you start, because most of the things will, or the way they operate will probably be already set when you arrive. With that said, I think there's always a possibility to push a little bit on how the company operates, especially in companies where things are a little bit more organic, a little bit more chaotic, like startups. And I know some people feel like, oh no, this is too much chaos for me sometimes. But the chaos actually gives a lot of opportunities to shape things and create processes and really make a dent on the spaces that you want to make a dent. So take those as opportunities. And what I would say too is that in cases like this, most of the people don't know what design means. Most people don't know what the value you can bring. So try to show by example, like go ahead and do it. Go ahead and create that vision deck. Go ahead and, without asking for permission, and present to the team and see how it goes. Like sometimes might not go super well. Sometimes might be, you might get some positive reactions. And with that, you can also try out and see, okay, is this the right place for me? Do people really like value my effort here? Because sometimes you do all this effort and people be like, no, just go ahead and sit in your desk and continue to do your Figma designs. If that's the case, maybe, take the time and do more interviews.
I think you're right there. I think there is the perception that you found the job, you've settled on a place of work, and maybe it's your own. When you look at your own resume, and there may be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and that might feel like it looks bad on the resume because you haven't really stuck it out. But at the same time, if you're doing the things that you're saying, and you're going above and beyond, and you're trying to work in a way which you believe to be valuable, and the right way to work, if you're not being met at least halfway, then I think that is perfectly valid to then go and look elsewhere where you may be able to gain that exposure to be able to then start progressing up towards that place of privilege. Because if you're forever being held back in your career by companies that don't value what you're doing and what you're trying to help them achieve, then it might be that you don't end up getting to that place of privilege, unfortunately.
Exactly. And I mean, like, it's, I think there's some factors here. One is there are companies and companies, right? There are founders and CEOs that create a culture that they see design as valuable or not. And it's okay, honestly. Maybe for the sector they don't think design is that much of important, and they still valuable. They still, kind of like making their path. That's fine. Like you don't need to struggle with that. So one thing that I usually do is when I'm interviewing, I look up for, what the culture is, look up for videos of the CEO giving interviews just to see like how they think about their product. Look up for leaders talking about the product itself. Those things will give you a very clear picture of like, okay, how design is positioned in this company, like how important it is. Because sometimes it's really not important, and it's just the reality. Um, and then the second thing I would say too is, yes, be patient, because I think these days, especially with COVID, people are really trying to accelerate career, and sometimes it really be time. You need to be kind to yourself too. It's not like, I think things are coming to normal again, and you're gonna have time, you're gonna have time to evolve, and you're gonna have time to learn from others. But what I would say is create a plan for your career, the same way you probably create OKRs with your team. Create some goals for you. Like, what's my main goal within 3 years, within a year, and how do I get there? What are the steps? And honestly, the steps are not like, oh yes, I just joined that company that I, dream of and I'll be the CDO there. It's mostly like, oh, first I'll go to a startup, I learn from them, then maybe I go to a big organization and I go as I don't know, an intern and I stay there for 2 years. I don't know what it is, but I mean, make sure that you have your longer term goal
Mm.
and a few steps to get there. At least like do the exercise of thinking about what are the steps to get there. And I usually keep a list of companies that I'm interested on. I'm interested in this company because of the space they are, or this other one because I heard the design culture is very strong, and I just stack rank them. If I have to leave my company right now, those are the top ones that I would like to join, and try to not feel like you're escaping all the time. Because if you're escaping all the time, you're less intentional about your next role, right? Like if I am,
Yeah.
oh, I just joined this company, now I can't stand anymore, and it's been just 3 months and 4 months, now I want to escape to another one. Then you just get the first one that shows up, right? But if you're like, okay, this is good for now, I just joined, but I still have my list, and whenever there's an opportunity that I feel like worth to take a shot, then I move to that without necessarily trying to escape the current place that I am today. Because I think we all have this like interesting way of um, using our time thinking about our career. It's usually like we don't think at all, especially in the first year that we join a company. And then all of the sudden, when we are like, I don't know, pissed and we want to move out, then we start to think about, okay, what the options are. And then you have very short time to think about what the options are. And sometimes you don't do a very good job. Whereas if you think about this as like something that you think about every day and you think about your future every day, whenever you have to make a move, then you already thought about it and it's a little bit easier. You can still make connections even if you're not looking for a job, meet people, talk with them. That will help you a lot in a moment where you feel like now I'm ready to move.
It's perfect. So just coming back to, you mentioned you've had some challenges with embedding UX strategy or wider strategy within a business. Like, what challenges typically come up? And have you got any kind of ways of being able to try and tackle those challenges that someone could utilize if they're in that position?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of challenges, and I think they're pretty much the two flavors that I mentioned before. One is designers complain that they don't have the space to play the strategy role. That's number one, flavor number one. Flavor number two, designers have the space, but they don't know how to occupy. Um, and sometimes it's a mix of both, and they kind of mix up and becomes like the snowball, right? Um, the first one is okay, we don't have the space. Usually, unless that's something related to performance issues or behavior issues, usually those are easier to solve. It's more like, okay, I mean, like if you're in a position that you can talk with, the general product manager person or the group program manager person, it's basically, hey, can we make sure that we include the designers on the early stage discussions? Can we make sure that, when we're talking about OKRs, when you're doing like a planning meeting, we include all the designers? That shouldn't be that hard if you're a manager, if you're a director of an organization. If you're a designer, what I would say is talk to your manager, talk to your team, and make sure that they at least know that you are not being included. Because of course, like you can't control what the actions they will take, but the least you can do is to make sure that you communicate that to them. Because if you try to do yourself, you might have a hard time. And I had a hard time before, right? Just trying to talk directly with the team and say, hey, why are you not including me? You can try. I think it's always like a good first try. But escalating that, I think, will be also a great way to move forward. Now, the other way around is like, okay, I'm a product designer. I have the space, but I sit there and I don't know what to do. I have no idea what they're talking about. Again, I think that's mostly about learning, right? Like talking
Yeah.
with other people, getting a mentor. These days you have adplist.org where you
Yeah.
can get support from other designers and even product managers. You can read a bunch of books, you can do your MBA, but just educate yourself and make sure that even if you feel like it's a stupid question, you're participating. Because honestly, people want to feel that you're interested and you're curious. So stupid questions might sound stupid, but shows curiosity.
Yeah. Perfect. So in terms of, I guess, starting out, so obviously you've just joined largest organization. I imagine there's some form of strategy already in place. So how do you then come in, look and observe that strategy, but then also start thinking about the impact you want to make? What are your kind of first steps landing in a new company? And what steps have you taken?
hmm I really like that book, The First 90 Days. As you've seen, like I like books. First 90 days, it's a framework where first 30 days, you're basically listening. You're basically doing your research and you calmly collecting data. I wouldn't say I had 30 days in this job to do this. I did like a shorter version of it, but that's pretty much it. First 30 days. And then the following 60 days, you're actually applying some of the learnings into actions. And they usually said like start with the low hanging fruits because then you're showing like, okay, your buy sort action. Um, so the first 30 days, well, again, sometimes could be shorter. I just try to talk with people. I schedule a bunch of one-on-ones. I create a document with my first conversations, and I take notes of every single thing, every piece, from, I don't know, personal preferences to, I don't know, what they think about the company. And I try to ask questions that you probably feel okay or better asking in the first weeks than later. So, for instance, where do you think the company is doing wrong? Where do you think we can improve? Um, what are the things that are not efficient here? And I just take notes of everything. And everyone will have like very different opinions. Sometimes they will agree with so few things. And then you can write a debrief later. Okay, those are the points that everyone agrees. Those are the points that um, are more personal. And you can also learn about people too, which is great. So that's number one, just talking with people one on one. Number two, I just look at all the past research, past user data, from data science team, everything from voice of customer, everything that I can learn about how our product is performing from the user perspective. Now, of course, there's also another layer to this, with the financial part of the company for me. It's like how we were doing in terms of financials, what are the things that are bringing us more revenue or less revenue, where we can improve, so on and so forth. So that's number two, just reading past documents. Number three, I just try to understand too, like how we're thinking about the future. Okay, so sometimes it's manifested in terms of mocks, sometimes manifested in terms of like planning documents or vision documents. So with this, I basically have, personal point of view of stakeholders and people in the team, number one. Number two, how the product is performing from the user point of view. And number three, basically how, I forgot number three. What was number three again?
we can circle back to number three.
But basically, okay, I'm trying to remember. But oh yeah, number three, the future of the company. So
Yeah,
basically anything related to the future. Um, so I think with that, I have a very good snapshot of how strategy is playing a role within the company. Then I feel better. Um, I have better tools to talk about
yeah,
strategy, to talk about the company future. And when I go to the meetings, like after the second month, then I'll have more instruments to really like have my own opinion. And honestly, because most of the people are not doing this work anymore, like recollecting data and looking at all these documents, you probably have a very different opinion than most people, or at least you're gonna have one piece of opinion that nobody's thinking about.
yeah.
And that's where I think you can really contribute.
That's fantastic. Well, that's pretty much it for the questions. Just want to say thank you very much for joining and just sharing your experiences, because I know that UX strategy, embedding UX strategy is just one of those areas that a lot of people struggle with. Not through choice, but often it's maybe environments. But I think there's been some really useful practical tips you've been able to share. So look, thank you very much for joining me for the UX Playbook. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It was a joy to talk with you. Bye.
You too. Take care.